The Little Cedar Tree.
A long, long time ago, on the mountains of Lebanon, a tiny seed fell out of a brown cone from an ancient cedar tree. The tiny seed stayed in the deep, cold snow until the end of the long winter, when nights were cold and dark, and the thin sun rays passed through the thick branches on short days. As the days passed, the tiny little seed sprouted, pushing its head through the frost and snow. The little cedar tree was tiny and had a pointed top like a pine tree. She was proud to be part of the great forests that covered Mount Lebanon from the north to the south. In spring, the little cedar tree watched the snow melt and the rivers swell. She felt the cold running water at her feet and sipped just enough to make her grow. She was happy to see the beautiful wildflowers bloom just in time for the bees to make their honey. In the summer, when nights were short and days were long, and the sun rays were hot, the fresh mist kept the little cedar tree cool and healthy. She yearned to one day see the sea in the distance, like the older, taller trees. As days became colder and shorter, the little cedar tree watched the oak trees turn yellow, orange, and red. She watched the squirrels eat acorns. She watched the eagles and hawks soar and migrate to warmer places. Travelers passing through the forests ate wild apples from the apple trees and rested under the shade of the cedars, because there it was safe from snakes. Snakes don't like the smell of cedar wood. During the long and cold winter, thick snow covered the trees. New seeds fell off the brown cones of the ancient trees, and the snow kept them cold until they sprouted. She watched the brown bears hibernate in the deep caves of the mountains, and mother wolves give birth to pups in their underground dens. The little cedar tree grew almost 2 centimeters every year. Someday she would grow tall and majestic like the other trees in the forest. Someday, when the underground water stops reaching her crown, she will lose her pointed top and have a flat top and wide branches, just like all the other cedar trees in Lebanon. She was a happy little cedar tree as she watched the seasons pass. She was happy to see animals and people sharing the forest. Soon, the little cedar tree saw people cutting down the ancient trees. People had realized that the trunks of the old cedar trees were strong, straight, and tall. They used the trunks to build great temples. The Phoenician king Hiram sent cedar trees to King Solomon to build a great temple in Jerusalem. The Phoenicians built ships out of cedar trees. These ships made their navy strong and powerful. They used the ships to trade with all the countries around the Mediterranean Sea, and they became rich and mighty. The Phoenicians traded cedar trees for gold with the Egyptians. The pharaohs of Egypt used the long trunks to build pyramids. They also used cedar oil to preserve their mummies. Ancient Egyptians called Lebanon God's land. The little cedar tree could see a small part of the sea far away and the ships sailing in the distance. She was a little sad because people forgot to plant new trees. But the seeds fell off the cones and new trees grew. Soon other kingdoms became powerful. King Nebuchadnezzar II ordered roads to be built through the mountains of Lebanon. The little cedar tree saw people carrying cedar trunks all the way to the Euphrates River. The trunks floated on the river until they reached the king's capital, Babylon. There he ordered his architects to build great palaces. The king forgot to plant new trees, but seeds fell off the cones and the snow kept them cold until they sprouted. Many years passed. The little cedar tree saw people carving signs on stones. The signs read, "Property of the Emperor Hadrian Augustus, boundary of the forests." The Roman Emperor Hadrian had ordered that these signs be placed around the forest. The Roman ships were anchored on the shores of Lebanon. They needed new timber from cedar trees to make their navy the most powerful in the Mediterranean Sea. The emperor did not allow anyone to cut down the cedars, but he didn't plant new ones. Year after year, the little cedar tree grew taller. She could see cities being built in the distance. She could see ships made of cedar trees sailing in the sea. She was sad because people forgot to plant new trees. But seeds fell off the brown cones, and just like she had sprouted from under the snow, new trees grew. One day, many seasons later, the little cedar tree saw people in beautiful robes made of magnificent colors climbing up the mountains. They came to the forest all the way from Baghdad and Alhambra in Spain. They came to the forest because it was so high and close to the stars. At night, the people in beautiful clothes took out their golden telescopes and gazed at the moon and stars. Then they scribbled numbers and symbols in their notebooks. She wondered what their writings meant. Were they measuring her love for the moon? Did they know that she loved the moon? As the years passed and new trees grew taller, the little cedar tree noticed more people in the forests, eating wild fruits and hiding. Now there was a great war that was called the War to End All Wars. The Ottoman Turks now ruled Lebanon. Instead of ships, they used trains to travel, and they burned the cedar trees as fuel to make the trains roar and dash all across the Ottoman Empire. The little cedar tree felt sad and lonely. Most of the ancient trees around her had been cut down or burned. She missed the shade of the ancient trees. Although she had lost her pointed top, she still wasn't as grand as the ancient trees that had been cut down. Now the little cedar tree had to shelter the smaller trees with pointed tops, as well as travelers who were passing by. When the Ottoman Turks left Lebanon, the little cedar tree noticed soldiers dressed in a uniform very different from the uniform of the Ottoman soldiers. They were French soldiers, drawing maps and marking borders. Now she was not only part of Mount Lebanon, she was part of Greater Lebanon. There was also a picture of her on the white part of the French blue, white, and red flag. The Great War did not end all wars. Now there was an even greater war all around the world. The flickering lights of the cities in the distance seemed dim and sad. The soldiers asked people to paint their windows blue. The little cedar tree saw the French soldiers hiding in holes all around Mount Lebanon and practicing their aim, preparing for the new Great War to reach Lebanon. The soldiers waited and waited, but the new Great War never arrived to Lebanon. Once the new Great War was over, the French soldiers left Lebanon. The Lebanese people raised their own flag all over Lebanon. It was a red, white, and red flag with the picture of the little cedar tree on the white part. The little cedar tree was proud and happy when they raised the flag and sang their national anthem, which was called All for One Country. Everyone was happy, so happy that they forgot to plant new trees. But seeds fell off the cones, and there was enough snow to keep them cold until they sprouted, just like the little cedar tree had sprouted a long, long time ago. The little cedar tree saw children and grown-ups laughing and sliding on the fluffy white snow of the mountain slopes. The skiers whizzed by her wide branches, so fast and so close that the breeze tickled her and she laughed. At night, she watched the cities on the coast shine with bright lights and heard the distant sound of music as the skiers danced under the moonlight. One day, the skiers stopped coming up to the slopes. She couldn't hear any music in the distance, and no one danced in the moonlight. The cities were dark and silent. The little cedar tree saw black smoke rising in the distance over the cities. She missed the people and their laughter. She didn't understand what was going on, what the black smoke was, and why no one visited her anymore. "15 times the seasons changed, but the dark smoke continued to rise. Neither the wildflowers nor the summer mist made the little cedar tree smile." One day she realized that the skies over the city were clear. The black smoke had disappeared. She could see lights flickering in the city again. The little cedar tree is now tall and majestic. Now the small trees with pointed tops look up to her and wish that someday they could look like her. She has survived many invaders, wars, and fires, but now she feels more unhappy than ever. Now, on bright and sunny days, she can hardly see the sea in the distance. She can barely see the huge cities on the coast through the thick, smoky air hanging everywhere. More and more trees are being cut down, and more roads are being paved everywhere for cars. Now the winters are short, and the snow covering the trees is not thick. Now there are no more brown bears that hibernate in the caves, and the wolves hide because they are afraid of people. Now the little cedar tree doesn't see the rivers swell anymore. She can't drink from the cold running water in the spring. There aren't enough wildflowers for the bees to make honey. Now summers are hot and long, and there is no fresh summer mist to keep the trees cool on hot summer days. Now people don't travel through the forests and they don't rest under her shade. There are no wild fruits anymore. Now people pass by in their cars and rarely stop to take walks between the trees. Now there are only a few squirrels to eat the acorns when the leaves on the trees turn yellow, orange, and red. The eagles and hawks build nests deep in the thick branches of the little cedar tree. They hide behind her thick branches because they are afraid of people. Now people realize that they need to plant new trees. But now, the seeds falling off of the brown cones do not sprout anymore, 'cause the snow is not thick enough. Someday, when people plant more and more trees, the wildflowers and fruits will grow again, and the animals might return. Someday, the little cedar tree will be happy again as she watches the seasons pass. She will be happy to see people and animals sharing the forest again.
Discuss.
1. How do the little cedar tree's feelings change throughout the story? Find quotes to support your answer. 2. Why do you think the author ends the story by talking about the future?